is living. This is style. This is elegance by the mile. Oh, the posh, travelling life, the travelling life for me. First cabin and captain's table, regal company. Whenever I'm bored, I travel abroad, but ever so properly. Forward out, starboard home, posh with a capital P-O-S-H, posh.
We're losing high!
Hello! Please come in. Come in. There's some fresh cookies in the cookie jar. There's a pitcher of Kool-Aid on the counter. Have a seat. We'll put a movie on for you. This is Movies at Grandma's House, where we look at the movies from the past to see if they're still good today. And I'm your host, Isaac. Toot sweets, toot sweets. Who's joining me for a classic, a flying car, all kinds of other gadgets to it, called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
This is Seth. Mr. Coggins, you can't sell our lovely car to that nasty man.
It is great to see you, Seth. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, just getting through our wonderful weather that we call winter here in Ohio. It's been fun. That's all I can say. You know, it's something I dread every year. I know it's coming, but I'm doing good otherwise. You know, I can't complain. It's great to be with you for this special episode. We'll get into why this is a special episode and one that we've been talking about doing for a while, just kind of as this kind of out of left field, random movie. But I think a lot of people have memories with this, so I'm excited to consider it. So before we get into it, though, just a quick reminder, if you could do us a solid, please hit that subscribe, hit that like button, hit the notify bell so you'll be up to date all things movies at Grandma's house. And our friendly reminder, if you've not seen this movie, as old as it might be, please stop what you're doing. Go watch it now. It's on currently Tubi. It's on several other platforms. You can actually watch it for free. You don't need a subscription of any kind, but go watch it. Come on back, because we're going to have a fun time with a little movie called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. And it was released all the way back as a premiere in London on December 16th, 1968. It came out in the US 2 days later on December 18th. So all the way back in 1968. It had a budget, I'm seeing, of 10 or, it actually says that, or 12 million. So they're kind of unsure, probably with the, whatever you want to call it, currency, money back then. It doesn't really have much on the box office side. It actually has in parentheses, I see rentals. I thought that was very interesting.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So I wish I did more research. I apologize. I wish I would have looked this up, but it says 7.5 million was the box office officially. And again, the rentals in there, maybe that's something we discuss on a recap episode that we do or something like that, or if we happen to come across it. I'm very interested to know. But with that said, I think this was well before our time. With that rentals in there, I think that's where a lot of people around our age know this movie. But I'm interested to know, what are some of your first memories with this film?
So believe it or not, I had never seen this all the way through. So this was extremely fresh to me.
Wow. And that's what makes it so exciting to me. I'm very interested to hear someone that's never seen it, because growing up, everybody saw this movie. There was just something about it. It had this charm to it. And a lot of people grew up watching it. And that's a lot of relatives I knew. And that's the memories I have, is being at relatives' house, including my grandma's. My grandma's house would have this on. This is definitely fitting the mold of our podcast and the theme. But I can recall other relatives having it too, just kind of here or there. I remember watching it all the way through, but I will admit it's been a while since I watched it all the way through. But that's kind of my first memories, is more like it was probably at a relative's house, kind of on in the background, or we all watched it together kind of a thing. So with that said, since you've never seen it before, I'm very interested. What were your expectations going into it?
Really enjoy the ride, pun intended.
Very fitting. Yes. It's a saying. I use that too. I was just thinking to myself, my children have never seen this movie. So I'm going to enjoy the ride of this movie. I'm also going to enjoy the ride seeing their reactions. That was my expectations going into it. So here we go. Very appropriate that we jump into it by taking the VHS out of the cover, putting it in the VCR, and press play.
Join Dick Van Dyke in this 1968 adventure, which takes place in 1910. A father and his two children meet a fancy woman. A lot of hilarity ensues with song after song and obstacle after obstacle in a picture that's 2 hours and 24 minutes long. Get comfortable. Hopefully, there's an intermission at Grandma's house for this one.
I love it. That's so appropriate. So I'm just gonna open it up to you because I'm so anxious to hear what were your first impressions when you're watching this movie.
So first of all, I have a lot to say about this film. So I'm going to start by saying, honestly, I didn't know what to expect. So when the racing started at the beginning of the movie, I got really excited. Then I quickly was awakened to the musical aspect, which took me a minute to adjust to. A first for our podcast, which we'll talk about later, was the intermission, which was needed.
Yes. Everything you're saying is just spot on. That's like the first impressions because I'm going to give my take, but I feel it's appropriate to give my children's take. And they didn't like it. I'm just going to say it. This is them. We'll get to my review at the end. I don't want to say that this is my thoughts, but they had the hardest time getting through this movie. And the big part of it was the music. They didn't like the musical aspect of it. And I had to keep explaining, this is what a musical is. They've seen musicals, but it's in Disney form. It's a lot more, animated and this is animated, but, live action, I guess is the way to put it. And it was just, I'm sorry. I know they were suffering through it, but I was enjoying their suffering. So many catchy songs, and I could just tell it was getting stuck in their head, but they didn't want it to because I thought it was kind of fun, going back through it. The first memories I have of these, kind of movies is sometimes those songs. So when the songs came on, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. So I was enjoying it, but yeah, that intermission, going back to that point you brought out, that came at like the perfect time because I used to watch movies from start to finish. When intermission hit, I was like, I got to take a break because it was a little too much for my kids. So it's just a modern thing. I think our attention spans are just different. Back then they did recognize, yes, we need an intermission, but an intermission for us is like, okay, we need to stop for a while because you mentioned how long is this movie again? Just for emphasis, how long is it?
2 hours and 24 minutes. That's got seconds on it too. It's almost 2 hours and 25 minutes.
I mean, movies are almost 3 hours nowadays. Yeah. So, but that's just crazy to think about back then. That was, that's why they put the intermission in there. That's absolutely
Let's talk about that for a second. So this is a big thing for us. We've never discussed a movie that has an intermission before. In the plot, I actually wrote the plot before knowing that there was an intermission. So it's kind of funny that I said, I said, get comfortable. Hopefully there's an intermission at Grandma's house for this one. I had no idea there was an intermission. I didn't know. I just wrote it in there to be funny, and it was. I was like, well, it kind of needed to come.
It was I will hand it to them. They did a very good job on the spot because it's the scene where they're going over the cliff, and it's right before Chitty Chitty Bang Bang is able to fly. It felt so much like those old school TV shows with the cliffhanger. So I actually really loved that. I was like, oh yes, because I remember there being an intermission, but I couldn't remember exactly when. And so when it happened, I was like, I really like that. There's just something about it. So it is kind of interesting because, like you said, it's the first time on our podcast doing that, but I enjoyed it. I don't know. It was just very good job. As much as this was made many years ago, it's very fitting, even for today. If you want to talk about things that hold up, that holds up well. Intermission and all. So I'm interested. What else kind of just stuck out to you?
So the plot, I was trying to get my head formulated around this plot. Was there a plot to the movie? I mean, okay, so here's what I wrote down. I know this was written by the man who created James Bond.
Yes.
But there was no clear direction as to where this was headed. So scene after scene, I felt pretty much like you could have edited any part of into any place of the film. So it really wouldn't have hindered the story if you were to splice any scene anywhere. And
Yeah.
I truly feel that way. Like what was the actual plot of the film? It's the plot of the film that he builds a car and it can do amazing things. Because I didn't get that. It didn't make sense to me. Like I didn't see like there was adventure after adventure. Like I said in the pot, there was obstacle after obstacle, but I didn't see what the goal was.
Yeah. That you're not wrong. Because if someone were to ask me, this is because there is a plot, but everybody's going to explain it differently, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm thinking.
my take is it's about two kids that really love this old car. And they want their father to buy it because he's an inventor and they think he'll fix it up and we can have adventures with it. So he does. He goes to great lengths. It's kind of a story of a father having, he doesn't have his wife. The mother's not there. The adventures of, going for it, making this car a reality. All the while, there's this very fancy woman that has his eye. And then it turns into just imagination. It's just this big adventure that's made up, and then everything works out. There's a happy ending.
Okay.
Spoilers. They're happy ending. They end up together. If that's what you're asking me, now is that the best plot? No, maybe someone has a much deeper take on it of all the because he talks about pirates that are coming after that, and they're very. I don't know how to describe them. Just silly and fun, because it sounds like it's a kid explaining it and it's their imagination. That's just my take.
So if I use my imagination, it's probably a much better film than what I was using to figure out what was going on. So I'd have to rewatch it then to get a really good idea, although that's a long watch.
Use the intermission to your advantage for sure. Definitely use that. I mean, I think I'm just getting old. Because anytime I hear 2 hours, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pace myself. So 2.5 hours. I mean, I don't care if it was made that long ago, if it was just made last year. I'm going to treat it the same way. So that's probably a me thing. Maybe some people look at that and go, what's the big deal? Because yes, movies are longer, it seems like nowadays. But I absolutely agree with what you're saying is, I think if you go into it with, this is just a silly imagination, I'll point out a positive about this movie. I mean, not that we've been bashing it or anything, but I want to throw out a positive randomly. The cinematography and the colors and how things are shot, like, I just kept thinking to myself, okay, 10, 12 million. That's what I was seeing on the budget. And again, this is 1968. That is a lot, because I kept thinking to myself, that had to be expensive for all the props, all the sets that looked like they were made, or they went to these castles in Europe that had to be so expensive. So I have to hand it to him. That part of it, if you go into it with an imagination, I think you do get pulled into it even today. Maybe it's not the most wow, amazing movie, but I think you can still enjoy it. I would say that's a positive.
To give it some perspective about how much 10 million is back then. So you could buy a brand new Corvette for less than $3,000, I think, back in 68.
Gosh, there you go. I mean, that's
so
what,
$10 million was a lot of money back then. A lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had, I mean, they did a lot in this film, so I'm not going to complain, but that's a lot of money to spend on a movie back then.
Yeah. That's what I kept thinking. And you look at like even the wardrobe, the costumes that they're wearing. I thought, man, that has to be expensive. And I'm thinking that's what the flair, the thing that set this movie apart from others was that aspect. That's why a lot of people probably remember it, and why it sticks out compared to movies maybe for its time.
So I just had a thought. Could this movie have been a fairy tale? Like, could have he just been telling the kids?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's what I'm.
None of
yeah.
it was real.
I don't see, because it starts on the beach and he points out to a ship and they're like kind of doing a playful like,
Yeah,
what's gonna happen?
yeah.
And that's where he's like, it's pirates, and it does the whole like,
That
foggy.
makes sense. If I would have looked at it like that from that perspective, I think I would have, had less expectations as far as like the seriousness of it. You know what I mean?
If you're taking that literal, I
Yeah.
totally get you. Like, what is going on?
That's how I took it. I took it like this is all real, and that's pretty unbelievable stuff.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I think that's how you have to look at it. As much as I want movies, whenever someone asks, what do you think of this movie? I think one can interpret movies differently in some cases. Some are very cut and dry. This is your straightforward plot. But this one, I think you do have to come into, okay, this is imagination, because I do see from your perspective, that's just going to throw you for a loop.
Make fun of me in the comments. Feel free. I don't mind.
I don't blame you, because I think that's, in my mind, growing up, I thought that too. It isn't till maybe it's just so
more
subtle.
Recently, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was paying attention to it this time as much as I had my kids and I was watching their reaction. I did notice that this time, and that might be a new thought, because growing up, I think I remember that being real, like the flying car aspect and pontoons coming out on the water.
The pirates was the hard thing for me to swallow. That was I kind of like did a double take, like what is going on here?
Yes.
I do have down we could talk about the characters for a second.
Yeah.
Of course the car is the main character, but Dick Van Dyke was really captivating as well, and the two children as well. I don't quite understand why they would name a character Truly Scrumptious, but she was a delight too, so that was nice.
I thought that too. There's a song, Truly Scrumptious, and I'm like, oh, they find her truly scrumptious. That must be a very cutesy way. And then I'm like, hold on, that's her name. Threw me there's a lot of things about this movie that throw you for a loop. I mean, like I said, I looked at it from the imagination, but that threw me off. So I think that's what you got to look at. A lot of the characters are fun and that sort, but even the characters will throw you for a loop. That's for sure. Even the name. Now, as far as characters, I'm so interested to hear. What did you think of I think it's called the child catcher?
I don't know what to think. I'm gonna have to revisit this down the road, and I don't know. There's so many unbelievable characters in this film, and then there's so many like slapstick, silly, funny, and there's so many like serious themes too. And I don't know how to figure out all that in my brain. I don't know. A lot going on.
Oh, it's.
I'll give it that. For 2.5 hours, a lot happened. A lot happened. Yeah,
it does. Lots of characters, actually. So when you say, let's talk about the characters, we touched on Dick Van Dyke. He's the main character, the inventor, the father. You have the children, and then you have the grandfather. He's like half losing his mind a little bit, kind of a thing, but he's fun. He's great. And then, I love the characters. They're just fun. If you take the imagination aspect of it, it's a fun character. Even the silly like henchman guys that the king has, he sent, or like the spies. I think that's what they were referred to as. They go and kidnap Truly Scrumptious.
So can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sense of this whole thing. So maybe in the real part of it is that he met this woman. He wanted the kids to like her, so he told a story about her. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I didn't get that. Okay. I didn't get that.
This movie just kind of jumps right into it, so I can totally see that. And like I said, I thought the same thing. But from the time they're on the beach for the picnic, after that, it's all, in my mind, imagination. That's him telling a made-up story involving the car. The car is the main character, like you said. The title of this movie is called Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. It's kind of that main character. So he's making the story revolving around all the amazing things this car can do. I mean, there's an ejector seat on it at one point, flings a woman up in the air, and that's got all kinds of things messed up with it. What'd you think of that scene of the king trying to shoot her down from a parachuting dress?
To be quite honest, I was overwhelmed with a lot of what was going on because it was a lot to take in. There were comical parts to the movie, but I felt like there were some serious things to the movie, and I was like, I didn't know how to piece it all together. It's just, it's kind of all over the place, if you ask me. It's not like it doesn't grow, like it doesn't grow progressively. It's like it's, here's a spot and there's a spot. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
You're hitting it on the head. I don't disagree with you at all. It is all over the place because, again, this pirate, the made up stories, this king, pirates, whatever, they steal things. And there's this made up village of Vulgaria, or what is it? I forget how to say it. But anyway, there's no children allowed. That's where that kidnapper is. I was wondering if that would give my kids nightmares. He has this like big cage that's hooked up, and he's just like, Handy, where the lollipops? And it's just like the big nose sticking out and looking to the side. It's just like, ooh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm an adult. Like, wow. So, but then there's some serious moments, like you said. The kids are underground, under the castle, whatever you want to call it, and they're kind of like fleeing for their lives. It's like, wow, this is kind of serious. It's kind of got that Oliver Twist vibe. That's what I was kind of feeling. So it can be serious, but it could absolutely, I mean, he hits the ejector seat, going back to that. She's parachuting with her dress, and then he's like, I'll get you down. He just starts shooting at her. I'm like telling my kids, this is not good. Don't ever think this is I'm not that we have a gun, but just don't think this is okay. Like, this is very, very silly slapstick.
Not cool.
No. And then she falls like, I don't know, 100 feet into water. It's like that would have snapped her neck or something. And they're just like, ha ha ha. And it's,
now that you bring up the serious notes and stuff, I'm starting to think about it with like the orphanage kids and stuff. That was pretty serious. That wasn't comical in any way at all. It has some heaviness to it.
I mean, you're dead on. I have to agree with you. It's just all over the place, and people sometimes love the chaos. So I think it's you got to just kind of watch it and see for yourself. I think it was a blast for me to watch my kids because they just, it was a good like learning experience for them. Like, they're not always going to get these cartoony, like in your face kind of movies. Sometimes you have these like more feel good stories, because again, the plot is about these kids that now have a mother at the end, happy ever after. If you want to talk spoiler of the movie, they end up together. So it has this feel good thing. Now, I will point out one more note. I still want to hear more of your thoughts, but I have to say this real quick. In her song, because they drop her off at her home and she goes into song because, of course, it's a musical. It was kind of a backhanded compliment, if you want to call it that. But a line, I had to write this down. She says, "What a lovely, lonely man," in her song.
I caught that. That was odd. That was very odd.
If I was a Dick Van Dyke's character, I'd be like, thank you. I guess. Like, I just thought that was odd. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that out because it was kind of an odd, okay, that was weird, but anyway, what else you got? Because I'm so interested if it's any more impressions or fun facts that you have.
Well, you and I talked about it. We both love the quote. Well, maybe the children like running wild in the street. Did that ever occur to you? I love how he says that so whimsically. Like it's like, and I love that. I've got 4 quick fun facts. So I don't know if you know this or not, but Benny Hill was at first brought in to rewrite some scenes which were requested by Dick Van Dyke, but ended up in the movie.
Really?
Yeah.
I could
Which
see
I
that,
thought was
though.
cool. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Dick Van Dyke only accepted the role on the condition that he didn't have to attempt a British accent.
Did he get some bad feed? I'm trying to think, like, Mary Poppins was before this, wasn't it?
Well, he might not have liked doing it.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
As the car is driven around English countryside, it passes vineyards. Those scenes were filmed in France due to its sunshine. Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense
Kinda
a little
cool.
bit, too.
Yeah, kind of cool. And the last fun fact I have is that Chitty was a 1921 Mercedes with a Maybach engine, which was part of it, put out 245 horsepower and 630 pound-feet of torque, but weighed nearly 5,000 pounds. So for a little tiny car like that, it was heavy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing half of that was the engine.
Yeah, that's wow. It was called Chitty. Mercedes.
Well, I called it Chitty, but it's got different names. I looked it up online. They named it different things, and I was like, well, they don't talk about that in the movie, so why did you name it that? Like, what? Where are you coming from here? You know, it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it's the sound the car makes. That's what.
That's why they called it that. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be anything else.
Yeah, it'd be funny if they just called it Chitty.
Yeah, simplifying it. I guess we could do you want me to talk about like an overview, or do you want to do like the user reviews first?
Go ahead if you have an overview, because I'm very interested to hear your thoughts. So go for it.
Okay, so this is my fresh take. Watching it for the first time all the way through. Not really sure what to think. Maybe with time, like I mentioned, it will make more sense, which now it does. Watching it, I was completely stricken with confusion as pirates chase them on the water, driving a car that floats, and in the sky as well. Not saying this is a bad movie, but does it hold up?
Yeah. All good, valid points, I think. But that's what I was interested to hear if you've never seen this before, because there's so many movies you watch them years and years and you have that nostalgia. So you're going to, in some cases, yeah, there's some flaws, but you can overlook them. I'm always interested to hear, fresh takes. Like, I've never seen this. So it's a very like eye-opening experience. Like, whoa, this is very different. So I love it. So yeah, that's pretty much all the thoughts that I have on it. So I'm interested then. Let's take a look at some of those reviews that are out there, shall we? And then we can get to our reviews and bring out anything else. But what kind of reviews are you seeing out there, Seth?
I dug through a lot of reviews. So our friendly commenter reviewed Ionic Breeze Machine, said, even uneven and a tad too long, the stuff that works brilliantly. 7 out of 10. So they really liked it.
We'll get to our reviews, but I think that's a really good summary. I agree with that. That's a really good summary. I like that review a lot.
So helpless _dancer says, that was one cool car. 7 out of 10.
It is a cool car. I mean, it really is. They know what they were doing with it. So, but I see a theme. 7 out of 10. That's kind of the running review. I think that's what I didn't mention that at the beginning. I think that's kind of the 60 to 70 out of 100 or 70%.
They were all over the place that I looked up. I was kind of shocked. So the last one I've got is Snoopy Style said, fun children's movie, but not all of it works. 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Still positive review.
It's still positive, and they mentioned that. So I'm gonna give them props for giving a proper 6 out of 10 rating. It just seems like that. I wish we could hand out awards like for people. It's a rare sighting. Like, you deserve a reward, because I don't know what it is about 6 out of 10s or 60 out of 100, whatever you want to rate it. It trips people up, and I'm not trying to be this, like, I don't know, whatever you want to call me, a jerk or whatever. It's just like, I don't get that. Like when people are like, I hate this movie, 6 out of 10. But that was a well done. Very well put for a 6 out of 10. And I think I could see that with this movie. We kind of talked about it. It's all over the place. So it's only fitting that reviews are probably going to be all over the place as a result. But let's get down to it because, again, I'm excited to get to our reviews and hear your final rating. So I have to ask you, Seth, for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, how are you going to rate it? Are you going to take it home? Are you going to leave it at grandma's? Are you going to hide it in the attic?
All right. Buckle your seatbelts. Okay. This movie was actually really hard for me to keep mulling over. This one, and please keep in mind, it's a 57-year-old movie. I liked some scenes, but couldn't retain my attention. That being said, I like older films. When I was a child, I couldn't stand them, but back to the review. Perhaps if they would have been able to edit out about 45 minutes, I would have been screaming, I really like this one. That being said, I have to hide it in the attic. It was a hard decision.
You know, that is very understandable. I think that we've, in the past, some of our hide it in the attics, we didn't necessarily hate the movie, but maybe you just don't need to watch it again. That's a very fitting rating. Like, I feel like I got all, and maybe that's a totally other topic because we do kids movies. We're doing a more family friendly, but I think there's a lot of documentaries, very serious movies. People have told me it's a great movie. I don't ever want to watch it again.
Yeah.
That could be a hide it in the attic because it's like, I just don't want to watch it again. So I get what you're saying there. Like, that's kind of the feeling that's there.
I'm going to hate this one. It just couldn't hold my attention. That's all.
Right. I could totally get that. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to do, though. This is why it makes it so exciting. This is the oldest movie we have considered so far. So going back and seeing, does this movie hold up? It's going to be a little harder, I think, for older movies at times because they're just made differently. Our attention spans or whatever you want to say is different. I was on the fence about hiding this in the attic myself.
Wow.
So that's why I completely understand what you're saying. And I think we're saying, I'm sorry if you love this movie, but if you're looking at with modern eyes, it can be a tough watch. Now, with that being said, I'm going to leave this at grandma's, but I am going to say it's very close to the attic. That's the placement of this movie. And the reason for that is I think if I have the right mood, I bet this would be a very enjoyable, let's get this out. We're at grandma's house. Let's get it out. But I am in no shape or form reaching for this one first. When I'm going to grandma's house, I'm like, no, let's not worry about that one. Just because the length alone to me is just, I can't get through long movies anymore. That's a me thing. So that's why it's my rating. But exactly what you're saying. It's so all over the place. So when you're thinking, let's put on a movie, it's like, get ready to be thrown this way and that way because it's just so. But then you might be in a mood for that kind of a movie. So that's why I'm gonna leave it at grandma's house. But I was on the fence.
My theory is because the writer is a brilliant writer. What happened was he wrote this really big novel or something, a big story, and they had to choose and pick parts of it to make it interesting. And they probably went a little too fast and could have maybe cut back some of those scenes and whatnot. But then if you extended some of the scenes and got rid of some of the scenes, to me, it would have been a great movie.
Yeah. It's based off of a children's book. I mean, Ian Fleming, he's, like we mentioned, he's known for James Bond. So it only has 46 pages is what I'm seeing.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm wrong.
I got the same idea. I just had to, when you're mentioning them, I'm like, I got to look this up. But I would have thought the same thing. Now, it does say volume 1. So there might be several volumes.
And they took from all of them.
Right.
Okay. So, that makes sense.
So it was probably long. I mean, depending on the book, how older books, a page could have probably like the equivalent of 5 pages today because it seems like text is a lot bigger than it used to be. It's like those older books. I mean, it'll take you a long time to just get through a page anymore compared to today anyway. So that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good way of looking at it is like, this was based off of a children's book and it kind of got crammed into this very long movie with an intermission. We got to stress that every time. I just love that. But I respect anybody that likes this movie because, again, there's some enjoyable parts. There's a lot of fun songs, a lot of songs in this. This is how musicals used to be. It's like they sang about going out to eat or something. That's how it was back then. I mean, they just walk into another room and they break out in a song. That's how it was. So this is chock full of songs.
Yeah.
But it is a tough watch for the modern take. So
yeah,
I think that's a very fitting rating that we have going on there. So, be forewarned if you're going to go back and watch it, make sure you have the time to watch it and just be ready for the randomness of it. That's all I get.
Well put.
Fair warning, I guess. So there you have it, folks. That's our review, though. This was a lot of fun to go back to, I have to say. As much as we might have said some negatives here and there, I think it was a lot of fun to go back through. So, recommend it at your own risk, I guess. But that's our rating. So before we wrap things up, though, Seth, why don't you tell the good people where they can connect with us and find us?
You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And email us at movies@grandmashouse@gmail.com. And we are on Patreon, so become a member and stay up to date with all things Movies at Grandma's House.
There you go. So that's another movie in the books. So that'll do it for our time here at Grandma's house. But don't worry, we will be back soon. But in the meantime, remember to be kind and rewind. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Lollipop. And all free today. Cherry pies, cream puffs, ice cream, treacle tarts.
Treacle tarts and ice cream and all free.
Come along, kitty winkies.
Come on.